Welcome to the course Communication with Narcissists, How to Avoid Going Crazy. Now, if you've enrolled in this course, then I assume you already have some experience with narcissists, be it in your personal relationships, be it in your work relationships. Maybe you have friends or family members who are exhibiting just some narcissistic traits. Yet what is common to all these people and relationships is that they are absolutely driving you crazy, at least from time to time, if not all the time. If you wish to better understand how narcissists communicate and why, and if you would like to change your communication style with them, then this is the right course for you. In order for you to be able to better follow or more easily follow this course, I have prepared a PowerPoint presentation. And I have divided this course into two parts, as you will see. Like I said, I assume that most of you already have some experience with narcissists. Most of you probably know quite a lot about narcissism. Yet there are also people who have never heard of narcissists or narcissism, who have no idea what that is, and enrolled in this course out of pure curiosity. All of you are more than welcome, because it's really important for us all to better understand narcissism and narcissists, if not to ease our relationships with narcissists, and then at least stop taking everything narcissists do so very personally. Now, I suggest we get busy with the presentation. I will be sharing my screen with you. There we are. Like I said, communication with narcissists, how to avoid going crazy. Narcissists are pretty skillful when it comes to driving people crazy, because they know exactly which buttons to push. They know what to say, which words to use to either upset us or to make us change our minds or to just manipulate us as much as they wish to. And because we don't know what kind of strategies they use, and because we don't have an appropriate communication style, we usually fall victims to their manipulation. So in part one of this course, we will be focusing on narcissists. More specifically, we will be talking about narcissistic characteristics. We will be discussing different types of narcissists, because not all narcissists communicate in exactly the same way. Then we will be talking about narcissistic personality disorder. Nowadays, people are very generous in attributing the narcissistic personality disorder to just about anyone who exhibits perhaps just one or two narcissistic traits. And I think that there is a lot of misunderstanding in this area, because many people believe that if you have just one narcissistic trait, or if you are perceived by a larger number of people as a narcissist, that you absolutely have to have a narcissistic personality disorder. But that is not true. People who are narcissistic do not have a narcissistic personality disorder. At least most of them don't, as you will see. In fact, in the general population, only about 7% of men have narcissistic personality disorder and about 4% of women. And if everybody does not have a narcissistic personality disorder, what else could they possibly have? Well, we will be discussing what happens within the spectrum, within the continuum of narcissism. So we will go from the narcissistic moment to the dreaded narcissistic personality disorder. We will also be discussing the narcissistic mask, what exactly it is, why are narcissists using it, and what is happening underneath it. If you don't understand that narcissists wear a mask, it will be extremely difficult for you to communicate successfully with narcissists, because if you don't comprehend that you are in fact talking to a mask, i.e., to what the narcissist is presenting, then you will miss the point in communication, because you will be talking or arguing with what the narcissist is portraying on the outside, and you will miss what the narcissist is actually thinking, feeling, and needing deep inside. And of course, we will talk about who gets involved most frequently with narcissists, because not everybody is attracted to narcissists. Only specific types of people get attracted to them and stay with them, even though relationships become toxic sooner or later. And if you know which type of person you are and why you get so hooked on a narcissist, it will be easier for you to resolve your script patterns and script decisions and change your approach to narcissists. In part 2, we will be talking about communication. Now, we communicate every single day. We have been communicating since day one. We communicate when we are born, not verbally, but with voice, with laughter, with crying, with gestures. We use many different types of communication, not only verbal. Verbal communication develops later on. And since communication is something so natural to all of us, we often do not even consider what communication is, because communication is a process. It has its own rules, it has its own components, it has its own function. There are many problems that can arise in communication. And I think it's really important for us all to delve a little bit deeper into the whole notion of communication and successful communication. So first of all, we will be talking about the process of communication. What happens when we communicate? We will touch upon successful communication. What is successful communication, and how can we become more successful in our communication with narcissists? Then we will discuss interferences in communication. There can be many, and it is important for us to be aware of them, to predict them in a way so that we can adapt our own style of communication. Then we will talk about how narcissists communicate. We will touch upon how we communicate, meaning how partners of narcissists communicate. Then we will be discussing communication with narcissists more generally. We will be talking about the purpose of communication, and we will also touch upon the importance of empathy. These last two elements pertain specifically to partners of narcissists. So pay special attention when we are discussing the purpose of communication and the importance of empathy. Now let's get busy with part 1. First of all, the origins of the term narcissism. You have probably heard about the Greek myth of Narcissus and Echo. There are several versions of it. I will briefly present you one of them, not because I would wish to delve into storytelling in this course, but because I think it's really important for you to understand this story, this myth, because many of the elements from this myth actually show up in modern relationships with narcissists as well. The myth of Narcissus and Echo is, in fact, a story of exaggerated self-love on the side of the narcissist and of the unrequited love on the side of the poor Echo. Ovid wrote about this myth in his Metamorphoses, sometime between 27 BCE to 14 CE, meaning that the term narcissism has been in use for quite some time, or at least the notion of narcissism has been present for centuries, even millennia. Now, Oxford's Learner's Dictionary says that narcissism is the habit of admiring yourself too much, especially your appearance. And this pertains to our narcissist in the myth. So what happens in the myth? Who was Echo? Echo was a beautiful mountain nymph, and she was a favorite of Diana, who was the goddess of the hunt. And Echo frequently accompanied Diana in her chase. Echo was a very chatty nymph, and she always had to have the final word. That's also important for you to understand, because in today's communication with narcissists, we frequently wish to have the final say, but we rarely get to have it. So Echo loved conversations, and her flaw was that she was simply too chatty, and she always had to have the last word. Jupiter visited nymphs very frequently because he was attracted to them and he enjoyed their company. And his wife Juno, who was very suspicious that something might be happening between Jupiter and the nymphs, decided one day to follow him in the woods and hills. And Echo, being talkative as she was, tried to detain her, to stall her with her constant chatter and clatter, just long enough for the nymphs to be able to hide. And when this goddess discovered that Echo had in fact tricked her or cheated her, she put a curse on her. And from that moment on, Echo could no longer speak as she pleased. She could only repeat the last words spoken by other people, which is something that happens to us as well when we communicate with narcissists and are sometimes so flabbergasted by what they say that all we can do is, mindlessly repeat the final words that they have uttered. Anyhow, because Echo was cursed, she could still, of course, talk, but she could no longer have the final say, the last word. So she only could repeat what other people were saying. And after she had been cursed already, she noticed one day that there was this beautiful young man named Narcissus, who is frequently walking in the forests or hunting in the forests with his friends. Narcissus was a very, very handsome young man, and he loved everything beautiful too. He was very vain, he was very proud of himself, and he despised people who loved him or liked him, which is another trait common to modern narcissists. They too despise people who adore them too much. So when Echo first saw our Narcissus, she immediately fell in love with him, and then she followed him quietly in his chase. And the more she saw him, the more she wanted to engage in a conversation with him, which of course she couldn't do, because all she could do was repeat the last words of other people. So she kept following him all the time, waiting for him to notice her and start talking to her. And one day, when Narcissus was separated from his hunting companions, he sensed that somebody is watching him or following him. So he called out, "Who is there?" And Echo, who wasn't able to say anything other than what he said last, also said, "Who's there?" And Narcissus was somehow startled by the reply, and he shouted out, "Come here." And Echo uttered the same words in response. And when nobody appeared out of the woods, Narcissus thought that the owner of this voice was actually running away from him. So he called out again, "This way, we must come together." And poor Echo said, "Come together." And she ran towards him. She rushed to him and she wanted to throw her arms around him. But he was so shocked and appalled by her gesture that he just scornfully rejected her, saying, "Hands off. I would rather die than you should have me and enjoy my body." And Echo's final reply was, "Enjoy my body." And then she fled away, humiliated, full of shame, and very hurt. And from that moment on, she lived in caves alone and in hiding. But her love for Narcissus, of course, continued to grow. And this, our narcissist from our myth, was not cruel to Echo only. He was also cruel to all of the other nymphs who were also quite charmed by him. Many of the nymphs were in love with him. And when he rejected another nymph, that nymph decided to put a curse on him. So she said a prayer, actually uttered a curse, saying that she wanted Narcissus to experience unrequited love as well one day. I assume you know what happened next. Well, one day he was coming back from the hunting and he was very thirsty because it was very hot. And this nymph sort of diverted him to a small pond. And when Narcissus from this myth saw his own reflection in this water, he immediately fell in love with this reflection. But the reflection could not reciprocate the love. And Narcissus was, of course, also hurt, and he couldn't comprehend why this beautiful reflection in the water is not responding to his charm offensive. And he couldn't comprehend how come that this reflection does not love him. So he too then withered because of this unrequited love. The nymph, of course, thought that he got what he deserved, but the end of this story is actually a sad one because Narcissus in this story gets hurt and his admirers, Echo and all the other nymphs, also get hurt. It's not a story with a happy ending. What is important for you to understand from this story is this relationship, the push and pull, who has the upper hand, who has to be in control, who controls the feelings of the other, and who has to have the final say. Narcissist, of course. Okay, so this was the story about Narcissus and Echo. But who was the first to actually come up with the term narcissism? Narcissism as a pathological egocentricity was first defined by Havelock Ellis in 1898. Havelock Ellis defined narcissism as a pathology, as a mental disorder. He mostly talked about narcissism as autoeroticism, which doesn't have to do with sexuality as such. It's more about admiring oneself to a pathological degree. Sigmund Freud also wrote an essay entitled On Narcissism, an Introduction, already back in 1914. And Martin Buber in 1923 wrote about narcissism in his essay Ich und du, meaning me and you. Description of narcissists. Now, these two quotes, I think, brilliantly describe the narcissistic personality. Sigmund Freud believed that narcissists are like royalty and they want to be treated like royalty, but at the same time, they act like spoiled, helpless babies. Sigmund Freud said that narcissists can best be described by the quote, His Majesty or Their Majesty the baby. Søren Kierkegaard also said that narcissists' quote would be, people understand me so poorly that they don't even understand my complaint about them not understanding. That is a typical patronizing, condescending statement from a narcissist who believes that he's so special that nobody can understand him but himself and his equals. Now, mind you, in this course, I will be talking about narcissists as men, which doesn't mean that women are not narcissistic or that women cannot be narcissistic. Women too can be narcissistic, women too are narcissistic. So all of the traits that I will be describing today pertain to women narcissists as well. It's just easier for me to describe the narcissistic relationship where the partner is the female and the narcissist is the male, because that's where my experiences come from, mostly. Now, characteristics of narcissists. If you have never ever heard of a narcissist, if you have no idea who a narcissist is, then this list of narcissistic characteristics will at least give you an idea. And I'm sure that once we go through this list, you will say, I know a narcissist. Narcissists believe themselves to be the most beautiful, the best, the smartest. They are omnipotent. There is nothing in this world that they couldn't do. And of course, they excel at everything. They are absolutely obsessed with their looks. They always have to be picture perfect, wear only the best brands. They should always look as if they came straight from a photo shoot for, I don't know, GQ or whichever else magazine. Narcissists always, always, always have to be in the center of attention. If they are not, they are miserable. They are striving for perfection and excellence, not only in themselves and for themselves, but they require perfection and excellence from their partners, their friends, and their colleagues as well. They don't like anyone who is average or mediocre. You have to be perfect. You have to excel at something if you wish to be invited and accepted in the narcissistic circle of friends. They're most definitely smug, conceited, and very arrogant, but they can also be charming and witty. They are intelligent and mysterious at the same time. They can be wonderful interlocutors. They are well-read. They know a little bit about many things. They also master certain topics. So if you wish to have an enlightening conversation with somebody, then narcissist can be the right address. They can be very convincing, which is a trait that comes in very handy in communication because they manage to convince you of just about anything they wish to. They're attractive and awe-inspiring at once. Now, if you're talking to someone whom you admire, who inspires some fear or awe in you, or just a lot of admiration and respect, then you're probably communicating in a slightly different manner with that person than you do with other people, because you wish to impress, because you think that this person knows more or is more experienced, or you don't wish to, be defeated in your arguments. In any case, you sort of become very self-conscious when you are talking to narcissists, and you tend to forget things that you excel at. Narcissists also like to portray themselves as flawless, meaning that they can do nothing wrong ever, and they don't ever do anything wrong if you ask them. It's always the fault of somebody else. It's always somebody else who is guilty for whatever goes wrong. They're also glamorous and successful because they are driven by perfection. They frequently achieve a lot of success in all areas. They put a lot of energy and effort into whatever they are engaged in, and they will do their best at everything that they become active in. They're very enticing. They know how to draw you closer. They're also grandiose, pompous even, and frequently they can get condescending and envious. Narcissists are convinced that other people envy them because they are so successful and important, but in fact, they are envious of other more successful people or other people whom they perceive to be more successful or better than they are at anything. Now, if we move on to the narcissistic personality disorder, I know that NPD is a label that you too probably put on just about anyone who you think it's a bit too show off, loves attention, or has to be the center of attention, or talks too much, or is flashy, or whatever else you believe narcissists to be. But not everyone who has a narcissistic trait or several narcissistic traits is narcissistic in the sense of having NPD. Now, some people believe that narcissism is part of the so-called dark tetrad. At the beginning, we had the dark triad, including Machiavellism, psychopathy, and sadism. Why have they included narcissism and expanded the triad into tetrad? I don't know. If I were to include narcissism in this group, I would say that only malignant narcissists fall within this definition. And malignant narcissists, as we will see later on, are much closer to people who have an antisocial personality disorder than those who have an NPD. So, who qualifies for a narcissistic personality disorder? Mind you, though, that even if somebody has a narcissistic personality disorder, that doesn't mean they will have this diagnosis forever, or that they couldn't change, or that just because they have NPD, they are an impossible person with whom you shouldn't have any kind of relationship. It's true that people who have the narcissistic personality disorder are much less willing to change their ways or change their way of functioning or thinking or experiencing emotions, but it doesn't mean that people with NPD cannot change. They too can change, not as easily as somebody who only has narcissistic patterns or style, but they do change and they can change. So let's go to the definition of the narcissistic personality disorder. This is taken from DSM-4, and it says that narcissistic personality disorder is qualified by the following. There has to be a pervasive pattern of grandiosity in fantasy or behavior, the need for admiration and lack of empathy, beginning by early adulthood and present in a variety of contexts, as indicated by 5 or more of the following. So at least 5 or more out of 9 characteristics have to be present, if not all the time, most of the time. Like it says in that initial sentence, it has to be a pervasive pattern. So all of these characteristics have to be present more or less all the time. If somebody only exhibits these characteristics every now and then that characteristics cannot be counted as a characteristic upon which the person will be diagnosed with NPD. So, narcissists have a grandiose sense of self-importance, meaning that they exaggerate their achievements and talents. They expect to be recognized as superior without commensurate achievements. Now, what does that mean? That means that narcissists exaggerate in everything they say and do. If you are communicating with somebody for whom you know exaggerates a lot, then it's really difficult to know for sure whether this person is telling you the truth or whether this person is lying. So be mindful of this characteristic when you are in a discussion with a narcissist, because narcissists tend to exaggerate everything. For example, if they go for a walk in a park in the morning, they will later on be explaining to their friends and family that they were training for a marathon or something like that. And they often require recognition and a lot of admiration, even for things that do not really merit that kind of admiration. For example, if they aced an exam, they want everyone to praise them or throw them a party, even though, everybody can ace that exam. Narcissists are also preoccupied with fantasies of unlimited success, power, brilliance, beauty, or ideal love. Narcissists fantasize a lot because they wish to be something that they are currently not, even though they are presenting on the outside as someone who is super successful and the best in everything, unmistakable. They are really very much focused on their future achievements, what they wish to become, what they wish to achieve, how they would like to be perceived by other people. And unlimited success and power and lots of money, that is something that they are truly fantasizing a lot about. That's why they like to hang out with people who are influential, who are in a position of power, who have a lot of money. Narcissists also believe that they are special and unique, and therefore they can only be understood by people who are equally special or have a high status. Meaning that ordinary people like you and me are simply not clever enough to be able to comprehend narcissists, like Soren Kierkegaard said in the quote I mentioned before. Now, narcissists also require excessive admiration. This is where the so-called narcissistic fuel comes into play. Narcissists literally die at a psychological level if the narcissistic fuel dries out. And without this narcissistic fuel, without excessive admiration and respect and adoration and deference, they feel like nothing, like they're not worth much. They need this narcissistic fuel to sustain the false self. Narcissists also have a strong sense of entitlement. They have unreasonable expectations of particularly favorable treatment or of automatic compliance with their expectations. So if you are in an argument with a narcissist, the odds are you will lose that argument because narcissists believe to be in the right all the time, and they require their wishes and commands to be fulfilled or executed pronto. They don't take no for an answer. They don't like any counter arguments. They absolutely abhor criticism. They're also interpersonally exploitative. They take advantage of others to achieve their own needs. And in communication, they will manipulate you in every possible way just to obtain what they wish to obtain. They're often envious, jealous of others, or believe that others are envious of them. We've talked about that before. And they show arrogant, haughty behavior and attitude. They can be obnoxious. Sometimes they can be funny, but when they exaggerate, they can be really difficult to be around with and even more difficult to communicate with. So, who has a narcissistic personality disorder? Somebody who fulfills 5 of these 9 characteristics and is exhibiting them every single day, or to an extent that is disturbing not only for the narcissist, but for his or her environment as well. We have different types of narcissists. The most dangerous are, of course, malignant narcissists. And malignant narcissists, I would say, are much more alike to people who have antisocial personality disorder. So malignant narcissists, we could call them sociopaths or psychopaths in common parlance. They are very dangerous. They literally enjoy in tormenting other people. They never take no for an answer. They can be sadistic. They are very dominant. They use emotional, sometimes physical violence to get their way. They tend to belittle other people, denigrate other people. So if at all possible, avoid malignant narcissists. Avoid all kinds of communication with them, because you will never win. You will never be able to enforce your argument or have your way. You will never be listened to or heard, because malignant narcissists tend to not only step on other people's toes, they actually don't care what happens to you. They would walk all over you just to get their way. Toxic narcissists also show some similar signs as malignant narcissists, but toxic narcissists will not go so far as to completely destroy you, while malignant narcissists enjoy and thrive on belittling you, on intimidating you, on making you feel like a tiny dwarf. And the more you fear them, the more they enjoy it. Toxic narcissists don't find such pleasure in this kind of behavior. They don't usually engage in this kind of behavior. They are not openly sadistic and vicious. The show-off, gregarious narcissists are your textbook narcissists. Most of the people would actually fall into this category. It doesn't mean that they have NPD, but it is more likely than not for them to have the narcissistic personality disorder. And these show-off, gregarious narcissists love being in the center of attention. They love to dominate in conversations. They have to be the leading one all the time. Nobody could ever steal the limelight away from them. They believe themselves to be better than everybody else, and they require a lot of narcissistic fuel. That's what they usually seek in other people. Covert vulnerable narcissists are sometimes difficult to spot because they don't exhibit these characteristic traits as openly as all of the other types of narcissists. They also have narcissistic characteristics. They too believe that they are better than everybody else, but they don't show it openly. And in communication with them, you will have to do most of the talking. When talking with other types of narcissists, you will mostly be listening and nodding and maybe can get the chance to say a syllable or two, but not more than that. When you're talking to narcissists, your function there is to mirror them, mirror their positive emotions, mirror their sense of grandiosity, and you have to be there to validate whatever they are telling you. That's your function. With the covert or vulnerable narcissist, you will have to do most of the talking. You will not get much feedback from the narcissist, at least not verbal feedback, but you will notice feedback in the sense of body language, or they will be tutting or rolling their eyes or, mumbling something for themselves. So different types of narcissists use different types of communication strategies. Your role in this communication changes depending on what kind of narcissist you are dealing with. James Masterson talked about different levels of narcissism. This might not be as relevant for this course as it is for the course on narcissists, but Masterson talked about 3 types of narcissists depending on how successful they are in organizing their lives, meaning how well are their ways of functioning adapted to their reality. This is important to know because these three types of narcissists will communicate with you depending on which sources are available to them in the moment they're talking to you. The high-level narcissist has it all figured out in life. Disappointments and failures in life are rebuffed in a typical self-centered manner, meaning that a high-level narcissist will not even admit there was a failure or that they did not achieve something. A high-level narcissist works in a field where the narcissistic supply is abundant and praise and adoration are to be found on every corner. This means that the living environment or the working environment of this high-level narcissist is such that when one source of narcissistic fuel dries up, it can easily and quickly be replaced with another one. So the narcissist in question can sustain the inflated false sense of self because narcissistic supply is available at all times in sufficient quantities. The medium-level narcissist needs to make a bit more of an effort to establish an environment within which there will be enough narcissistic supply provided to him. So if one source is depleted, a new one will not be found as quickly nor as easily as in the situation of the high-level narcissist. And the low-level narcissist can be compared to our vulnerable type. Masterson says that low-level narcissists have very poor defense mechanisms and they frequently fall in and out of depression. So communication with somebody who is quiet and depressed is usually not very pleasant, and it requires a lot of effort and energy on your side. Now, moving from moment to disorder. In the narcissistic continuum, we find different elements or different, I don't even know how to call them, different segments. We have a style, we have a pattern, and we have a disorder from one extreme to the other. Somewhere outside of this continuum, we find narcissistic moments. Narcissistic moments are something that we all experience from time to time. They are episodes or bursts of narcissistic dynamics that simply come over us, even though we are not narcissistic in most circumstances and do not suffer from a narcissistic disorder, pattern, or style. For example, every now and then we all act like narcissists, either because we are tired and our defense mechanisms are down, or because we have achieved something important and we wish to celebrate and we want all of the attention to be on us and we want everything to go exactly the way we have envisaged it. So every now and then, at random occasions, when we are under stress, pressure, or when we feel out of balance emotionally, we lose touch with our internal sensations and relational needs, and then we become slightly narcissistic for a moment or two. And we too can act in a haughty, entitled, arrogant, even dismissive manner that is usually not typical of us. And when we experience such a negative narcissistic moment, we usually feel, well, ashamed after it. And at times like this, when we are experiencing a narcissistic moment, we are likely to provoke an argument or disregard social norms, which doesn't mean that we break the law. It's just that the common social norms are usually broken then. We have an angry outburst, and sort of project our negative feelings onto somebody else, or we just exaggerate our own importance. Now, what is a narcissistic style? Narcissistic style describes how people act in life more generally. So those with the narcissistic style are the least problematic among the narcissists, in the sense that they do not cause a lot of difficulties or great damage or pose significant problems for themselves or for other people. The only time they revert to archaic forms of self-regulation is when they are under extreme stress or pressure. They usually know how to behave appropriately in social situations, and they lead successful lives. They can be charming interlocutors in superficial relationships. I think you know that narcissists usually engage in more or less superficial relationships. They do not like intimate relationships. Why? I will talk about that later on. Suffice it to say for now, because they have a really poor sense of self, and their self-image is not a positive one. Now, narcissistic pattern. Those people who have a narcissistic pattern act in a disturbing way in all areas of their lives, and not just on occasion when they are under a lot of stress. And they cause difficulties for themselves and for people they interact with as well. And in times of distress, uncertainty, or when interpersonal conflicts arise, they resort to the archaic patterns of self-regulation in a destructive manner. This means that all of their negative narcissistic characteristics come out and they are exaggerated. And then we have, of course, the narcissistic personality disorder that we talked about beforehand. If we move on to the narcissistic mask, what is it? What is its function? Why is it even there? Narcissists chronically lack the sense of self-love, which means that they are incapable of self-love. They wear the narcissistic mask because they wish to present themselves as something different, something likable. Deep down, narcissists are considerably different from what they are presenting to the outside world. And they lack this sense of self-love because they believe that they are not worthy of love. They believe that they are not good enough, that they're not smart enough. So forget about everything narcissists are presenting to the outside world. That's not who they really are. That's not what they really think about themselves. What they really think about themselves is hiding deep on the inside, behind the narcissistic mask. And narcissists also have more than one mask, usually. It happens quite often that they use different masks for different publics. You know, they wear one mask in a relationship with you, they wear a completely different mask when they are at work, and a whole different mask when they are with their friends. Narcissists have a significantly impaired ability of self-love because nobody ever taught them that they are good enough and worthy of love, which is sad, really, that they have to walk around wearing a mask or assume a whole different persona just because they believe that they are not worthy of love or lovable. Narcissists also rarely assume responsibility for their actions, and they always make sure their needs are met, even at the expense of other people. So again, it's much easier to wear a mask, to fake it, to pretend to be somebody else, than to face reality and show vulnerability. Because the purpose of the mask is to hide the insecurities, to hide vulnerability, to hide all of the intimate details that they do not wish to share. The mask is also intended as a shield to protect them from other people who would wish to dig into narcissist past or who would wish to poke into the old wounds. Narcissists don't like that. They don't want to expose themselves, their true selves. They don't want to show the vulnerability, and they would much rather present a solid, tough mask of a successful, infallible individual than to ever admit that they too might have a flaw or two. They rarely admit guilt because they're perfect and infallible, so they can do no wrong. It's always somebody else who has to assume responsibility or take the blame. On the outside, they look perfect and display all their typical characteristics. But what you are seeing is this mask. It's not who narcissists really are. And what is happening under the mask? Lorna Smith Benjamin says, there is extreme vulnerability to criticism or being ignored, together with a strong wish for love, support, and admiring deference from others. So you see, narcissists are conflicted. On the one hand, they wish people would love them and respect them and admire them, but they believe at the same time that they are so unworthy of love and so depressed and miserable and so incompetent and incapable that if they show their true self, nobody will love them, respect them, or admire them. The baseline position always involves non-contingent love of self and presumptive control of others. Narcissists love to have control over other people and over situations in general. And since they have this tendency to have the upper hand, communication with them can be quite frustrating because narcissists will always try to dominate you in communication. If the support they receive from other people or admiration or deference is withdrawn, or if there is any evidence of lack of perfection, the self-concept degrades to severe self-criticism. So narcissists are presenting this inflated sense of self that can only thrive for so long as there is narcissistic fuel provided from other people. If anybody expresses any doubts about what the narcissist is presenting or saying, or if anybody criticizes a narcissist, then this inflated sense of self will deflate, and the narcissist will start to self-criticize very severely. They're also totally lacking in empathy because they treat other people with contempt and hold the self above and beyond the fray. I think we've missed empathy when we were discussing the narcissistic personality disorder, or we glossed it over. Empathy is a concept where opinions are very divided. Some people say that narcissists lack empathy completely. I believe that they do have some kind of empathy, maybe not the empathy other normal, non-narcissistic people are experiencing, but they still have empathy. Now, Simon Baron-Cohen says that narcissists have this intellectual empathy, and I agree with that, because if narcissists did not have any empathy, then it would be extremely difficult for them to attune to you, to your feelings, to your wants, needs, and desires. It's almost impossible to manipulate someone if you don't know what that person is experiencing, how they are feeling, what they are thinking, and what they are wishing for. Narcissists are extremely skillful at attuning to other people's emotions, expressed and unexpressed needs, feelings, and desires. That's why they can manipulate you so very well, because they are empathic and they know what you're feeling. It's just that the empathy they are feeling and expressing is a self-interested one. They show empathy in order to benefit from it. Not you, them. They have to benefit. Narcissists do have empathy. They show you empathy, but only for so long as they need to. So what do narcissists truly think of themselves? Now, this is all hiding behind the mask, somewhere deep down, in a dark cave, hidden in the soul of a narcissist. Narcissists are afraid of criticism, disapproval, and rejection. And they perceive every critical remark, even though it's well-intended, as severe criticism not only of what they did, but of who they are. That's why they're experiencing a lot of shame whenever you disagree with them, whenever you express an opinion that is different from their own, or whenever you make a suggestion that they perceive as criticism. They are afraid of rejection. That's why they wear the mask. That's why they want to fit in. That's why they want to charm everyone, because deep down they have this underlying sense of depression, a very strong fear of rejection and abandonment, because their self is an inflated, false self. They absolutely need to be accepted, validated. They require positive mirroring. They need to be admired. They need to be praised all the time. Otherwise, they feel like they're worth less than nothing. And narcissists also don't want to get involved with other people unless they are sure that they will be liked. So if at the beginning of your communication with your narcissist, you show that you might not agree fully with him, or that you don't like him 100%, or that you're not in awe of him, the narcissist will probably not engage in communication with you. They're very hesitant in intimate relationships because they fear being not only ridiculed, but rejected, because they have such a poor self-image and a basically non-existent sense of self-worth. They will not show their vulnerability. They will not show any negative thoughts and emotions that they are experiencing. They will not admit to having any flaws, because they're just so terrified of being ridiculed, rejected, shamed, and so on. They also fear rejection and criticism in social situations. That is why they always have to be the center of attention. They have to have total control of their environment, of everything that is going on in that environment. They need to have control over people they are interacting with. They have to have the upper hand. They don't like surprises. They don't like the unknowns, be them known unknowns or unknown unknowns. Unexpected situations freak them out. They throw them completely out of balance. And deep down, they really see themselves as less worthy, less competent, less attractive, less successful than other people. That's why they have to have that ridiculously grandiose mask when they are communicating with other people. Now, we have to talk about who gets involved with narcissists most frequently as well. There are 3 types of people that get involved with narcissists most often. Some combinations are absolutely toxic and explosive. Some combinations are damaging to one party, and some combinations tend to be successful for a limited amount of time, but then they fall apart as well. One of the most toxic combinations is a narcissist and a person with not only a borderline personality disorder, but somebody who has a borderline structure. Why? For a very simple reason. Narcissists tend to shower their love interests with a lot of care and attention and love at the very beginning of the relationship. And that is something that borderline people need more than the air they breathe. And when they meet their narcissist, they believe they have found the perfect match, their savior, their solid rock that will always be there and protect them. They think that they have finally found stability and security. What's in it for narcissists? Well, borderlines are very well attuned to other people's needs. And they are also very much attuned to the unexpressed experiences, thoughts, and emotions of narcissists. In particular, what they share is these underlying depression, fear of rejection, and abandonment. At the beginning, relationship in which there is a narcissist and a borderline functions perfectly because the narcissist is providing a lot of care, love, attention, stability, and security to the borderline, and the borderline is giving the narcissist so much narcissistic fuel that it's almost impossible to ingest it all. However, the problem arises when the borderline starts craving more intimacy, and then the narcissist starts withdrawing, and the borderline freaks out because of the fear of abandonment. And because narcissists understand these fears of abandonment, they are projecting them extensively onto the borderline. And this is where the toxicity happens. The narcissist is withdrawing, the borderline is crawling, and sooner or later, this relationship falls apart because the narcissist breaks it off, withdraws, and the borderline goes crazy. So that's the most toxic combination. What unites them is this sense of depression, fear of abandonment, fear of rejection, and they also both strive for acceptance, stability, nurturing, and protection. The second popular combination is an empathic person and a narcissist. This combination is usually detrimental to the empath because the narcissist will sooner or later get fed up with all of the attention and devotion and crawling and bending over backwards from the empath, that they will simply walk away. Because if you remember, we discussed previously that narcissists don't have a very high opinion of themselves. And sooner or later, they start thinking, well, if this person is so very much in love with me and respects me and admires me, and I know that I'm not good enough, then there must be something wrong with that other person for seeing me as perfect, because I'm really not. And the empath, of course, is a perfect source of narcissistic fuel as well, because the empath intuitively senses what the narcissist's unexpressed needs are. And the empath can very well fulfill those needs. And narcissists usually feel very comfortable and safe and secure and loved and pampered in a relationship with an empath. Of course, again, until the empath wishes to establish a bit more intimate relationship. And intimacy scares narcissists a whole lot. And that's when they usually start withdrawing. And the third combination is one narcissist with another narcissist. Usually it's the covert, vulnerable narcissist with any other type of narcissists. At the beginning, this is a perfect combination because they both love the high-flying life. They like to invest a lot into their outer appearance. They love luxury. They love a carefree life without any responsibility. They enjoy having a superficial relationship. Nobody will be poking in the wounds of the other person. They will not be discussing intimate issues. The only problem is that there can only be enough attention for one person in this relationship. Only one person can be respected and admired and praised. So when the covert narcissist makes the mistake of stepping into the limelight and stealing some of the attention from the overt narcissist gets angry and mad and usually leaves the covert narcissist. So these would be the three most frequent combinations in narcissistic relationships. If you are a borderline person, in a relationship with a narcissist, then be very watchful in communicating with your narcissist. Borderlines like to present ultimatums. They like to threaten. They like to threaten with suicide as well. They like to manipulate and play the victim. All of these tactics are terribly unsuccessful in communication with narcissists. So if you are employing any of those communication strategies, abandon them immediately and start working on your life script. Don't look for a savior in your narcissist. If you are an empathic person communicating with your narcissist, then try not to talk to your narcissist as if you were a parent talking to a little child, because narcissists will perceive that as patronizing, and they will feel like you're mothering them and will not see you as an equivalent adult partner, which they often don't as it is, because they always believe that they are better than other people. And if you are a narcissist in a relationship with a narcissist, then if you enjoy a superficial relationship, then only talk about superficial topics. Don't delve into intimate issues, because in a relationship, there is usually reciprocity. So if one of you opens up, the other one will have to as well. If you enjoy such a relationship, if you find it fulfilling, then don't make the mistake of contradicting your narcissistic partner in public. Don't steal the show. I know it's difficult, but if you have chosen to be in a relationship with a narcissist and you crave the limelight as well, then maybe you need to reconsider your relationship with your specific narcissist. So we have made it now to the end of part 1. I hope that you now better understand narcissists, their functioning, narcissism in general. And hopefully you have gotten, if not an insight, at least a glimpse of what kind of communication style could be appropriate for communication with your narcissist. Because when you are communicating with your narcissist, you need to be aware that you are not talking to the mask that they are presenting. You are, in fact, talking to the person who is hiding behind the mask. I know that in the heat of an argument, when you lose self-control and when your defense mechanisms come up, it's really difficult to stay mindful and talk to the little boy hiding behind the mask. You go straight to attacking the mask. Don't do that, because it's counterproductive and you will not get very far. So when you are talking to your narcissist, ignore the mask, try to understand what is happening behind the mask. Don't patronize your narcissist. Try not to be overly critical. Always make suggestions. And whenever you are talking to your narcissist, talk from yourself, from what you're feeling and experiencing. Don't point your finger. Don't blame your narcissist. Don't transfer the responsibility for how you are feeling onto your narcissist. I hope this was useful, that you now truly have a more complete picture of narcissism and how narcissists function and why. Now I suggest we move on to part 2, communication.